There's been an emotional send-off for Brisbane's iconic radio breakfast team Laurel, Gary and Mark. Their final show airing as 4KQ prepares to be switched off next week. Rosanna Kingson has more.
They've been a constant on Brisbane's airwaves for 16 years, but today Laurel, Gary and Mark signed off for the last time as 4KQ prepares to be switched off next week. The final breakfast show saw listeners farewell the trio. Former 4KQ newsreader John Knox came back to say goodbye, while Robin Bailey ran over from sister station Kiss FM to hug the team. The studio jam-packed for Laurel, Gary and Mark's final minutes on air.
And it has come to this. This is our final break.
Yeah. Oh, is it really?
I'm not looking at
This is our final break on 4KQ.
We don't have another one closer.
We have no more.
They finished with a song written by Gary and sung by Laurel, summing up how they feel about the end of Brisbane's most popular AM station after 75 years on the air.
all the good times we had will be in the past.
From next week, 4KQ will cease to exist, replaced by the Sports Entertainment Network, a change that's devastated the team and listeners.
You've got this family, and it is family, you know, and we've had so many of them ringing in tears. Some are angry, but most are very, very sad.
We'll have more from the trio's final morning on air with 4KQ in the news at 6 o'clock.
And we wish them all the best.
A popular Brisbane radio show has signed off for the last time. On air since 1947, 4KQ will now begin the transition to sports broadcasting. To mark the end of an era, tonight we look back on the classic hit radio station's long and rich history.
It is 10 to 9 and it has come to this.
75 years of radio coming to an end.
We love 4KQ. 4KQ is my station.
On May 7, 1947, Frank Sinatra had the #1 single in Australia. The Cold War had just begun. Ben Chifley was Prime Minister, Ned Hanlon Premier, and the Labor Party launched its own Brisbane radio station, 4KQ. They later sold it,
Getting Brisbane to you on the great KQ.
and the station became known as a home for classic hits. In the 50s, young Bee Gees competed in 4KQ's Talent Quest.
And we lost.
Yes, well, we were hoping you wouldn't bring it up again.
In the 80s, the station briefly flipped to playing country music. In the 90s, there was even a wedding.
The bride, traditionally late, walked down the aisle, well actually the corridor, and into the studio to her waiting groom.
It's a rich history breakfast host Laurel Edwards knows all too well.
But what you need to do is phone is send me a fax or write a letter, I'm afraid.
Last month, celebrating a milestone.
I must admit I had a lot of tears on my 30th anniversary because that was when I knew what was going to happen.
4KQ was sold in November to SEN, which will now turn the AM station into 24/7 sports radio. The classic hit station won't be turned off until midnight next Thursday, but for this breakfast radio team, 16 years on air, all comes down to this moment.
This is an historic moment. It's a very memorable moment.
The end of a radio era.
Goodbye.
Boy.
Goodbye.
Meg Sides, 9 News.
And we wish them all the best.
For years, they have been waking people up across Brisbane and no one has complained until now. The breakfast show of Laurel, Gary and Mark today wrapped up for the final show on 4KQ with a send-off that included good times, great hits and plenty of tears.
You don't work together on a tough gig like capital city Brekkie radio without plenty of compatible chemistry. And Laurel, Gary and Mark have been sharing bucket loads of it.
We've tried to get us heritage listed, but so far, no luck from Queensland Government.
It's when the music comes from here. 4KQ.
693 4KQ has been a constant of Brisbane's radio landscape for 75 years.
You've been listening to one of those rude hard rock stations. I warned you they'd blow your feathers off.
4KQ.
4KQ, we play the songs you know and love to sing along to.
And for the last 16 years, these three have been that early morning wake-up for many.
I don't need an alarm clock because I've got a prostate that wakes me up all night long.
Wondering how long it would take them to get to
You
that.
really didn't have to share that.
Hey, look, why not? The audience need to know.
I have 20-year-old kids coming up and saying, "You've been doing my birthday call since I was 1."
But with the shock news that 4KQ had been sold to sports-centric SENQ, music lovers of the 70s, 80s and 90s have been hit squarely between the ears.
Well, it's our fault for being successful.
Yeah.
Because when we weren't, by golly, no one bothered us.
No, they forgot about us.
But then suddenly you hit number one and it's bye-bye.
And it's all about Brisbane memories, Brisbane people, Brisbane stories. So that's probably what we're going to miss.
It's amazing how many people have said in their emails, it's like someone has died in their family.
It's hard to comprehend that Brisbane's longest-running radio breakfast show, 16 years, will be gone with the flick of a switch. And I reckon a big chunk of Brisbane's listening audience will really miss it.
Oh, I'm really quite sad. Hey, we better fly. We're going to hand in our security passes.
Oh, I'm taking this.
Well, they're not getting this.
No, I won't.
All right. Oh.
And there they go. Professional and still making us smile to the very last time call.
And I'm a bit concerned if we do go elsewhere, I may have to write a new joke.
Yeah, that's right. Why should you?
I'm starting to feel the pressure.
They've been going for the last 20 years.
Tim Collins for 10 News First.
Oh, they will be missed. Such an institution.
We're with a much-loved breakfast radio team on their last morning with 4KQ.
Live from Brisbane, 7 News with Sharon Gadella and Max Butcher.
There has been an emotional send-off for 4KQ's breakfast team, Laurel, Gary and Mark, signing off as the classic hit station prepares to be replaced by 24/7 sport. But is it really the end of the Brekkie trio?
For 16 years, they've been a breakfast staple.
Good times and great classic hits, 4KQ, Laurel, Gary and Mark.
Their show, also a classic hit, but today marked the end of one of the longest radio runs in Queensland history.
I have my kids here today, actually, so thank you for coming in.
They came in to borrow some money. But anyway.
Emotions ran high as listeners said farewell. Old faces like newsreader John Knox returned as Robin Bailey from Kiss FM rushed over to embrace the team.
And it has come to this. This is our final break.
Yeah. Is it really?
I'm not looking at
This is our final break on 4KQ.
We don't have another one closer.
We have no more.
The studio jam-packed for the swan song.
Thank you, everyone. We love 4KQ. 4KQ is my station, and we've got a little song for everyone.
Played by Mark, written by Gary, performed by Laurel.
All the good times we had.
You've got this family, and it is family, and we've had so many of them ringing in tears. Some are angry, but most are very, very sad.
Goodbye.
We're clear.
While Laurel, Gary and Mark are now off the air, 4KQ's classic hits will continue another week until the switchover on July 1. The trio won't say what's next yet.
Oh boy.
Someone will snap us.
Yeah, we'll do it for free.
Free?
Until then, they've hung up the headphones for a well-earned break. Rosanna Kingson, 7 News.